All right, thank you so much everyone for joining us today. We are so excited. My name is Janet, the CEO of LINK3D, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you Vishal, our CTO and co-founder at LINK3D. So like most tech entrepreneurs, he left his PhD studies at Columbia to pursue an entrepreneurial career. He's an outstanding researcher and also has several patents and publications under his name. And throughout the past few years, he had met Shane, our CEO of LINK3D, and together they developed LINK3D to introduce automation to an organization's industrial 3D printing workflow with built-in AM tools to connect the digital thread. That being said, the goal of today's webinar is to introduce how OEMs, service bureaus, and other players in the industry can utilize blockchain into their digital factory and help them take advantage of this advanced technology to achieve end-to-end traceability and help them move towards 100% repeatability across their facilities and machines. And so with our learnings from our customers, we want to share with you how these organizations, like yourself, could take advantage of blockchain so you can build a better and stronger and more secure 3D printing ecosystem. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Vishal. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Let me just set up this one.
So during the presentation, feel free to post your questions in the QA in the chat bot, and we will definitely respond to you.
Great, thank you. So let's start with how to be blockchain ready for 3D printing. So in today's presentation, we'll be covering how blockchain works, what are the benefits of using blockchain in the 3D printing industry, who in the 3D printing ecosystem needs blockchain, what are the most common use cases and industrial applications of blockchain in the 3D printing industry, and how can 3D printing community and companies be blockchain ready. Let's start with the basics, how blockchain works. So at the fundamental level, blockchain is a distributed ledger technology. What basically means is it's a distributed database in which blocks are added to the network and transactions are stored on the block. Some of the characteristics of blockchain which makes it a very interesting technology are the transactions are verifiable, they're transparent, it's a tamper-proof technology, it's always growing and irreversible. What it means is that any data or transaction that is stored on the blockchain cannot be edited or removed, which makes it tamper-proof. Since it cannot be removed and only added, it's growing. Since it cannot be edited, it's irreversible. And because it is publicly available on the blockchain network, it's verifiable and transparent. With further diving deeper into how blockchain works, each of these transactions are securely stored on the block or on the blocks. Essentially, these transactions can be anything like a financial transaction, like a person A sending some money to person B. In the 3D printing ecosystem, it could mean a design engineering team sending files to application engineering. Whatever be the transaction, there are certain characteristics that the transaction demonstrates. For example, it will have a timestamp, it will have certain transaction data, and every transaction when stored on blockchain will be signed by the user or the program, which is called as contract, before being stored to identify the identity of the person or the signing entity. And all of that, once the transaction data is stored on the blockchain, that transaction information or whatever is in the database achieves the following properties which we just covered. Going further, so what are the benefits that these characteristics of blockchain bring to the 3D printing ecosystem? To showcase some of the benefits here, since 3D printing is digital manufacturing, some of the challenges of digital manufacturing or the internet world are inherited by this advanced manufacturing technology, and it needs certain solutions, and blockchain offers those benefits to the 3D printing ecosystem. One of the benefits is it provides data security and IP protection. Furthermore, it provides audit trails and file ownership. It helps in eliminating tampering of parts at the design level and even post-production. It can help in managing forensics and recall management. For instance, suppose some part was printed using incorrect parameters or material properties or something else, that part could be isolated, and that run could be isolated for the purposes of recall. Not only that, similar characteristics could be utilized for ensuring quality control to make sure the part was printed using correct parameter, which actually gives you more quality control in the process. I mean, all of these tie up into better data governance, data provenance, and eliminating some of the security issues that 3D printing ecosystem is encountering, leading up to a hassle-free 100% repeatability across 3D printing machines and facilities. So going further, now we have seen the benefits, and when should you consider blockchain? We came up with certain questions here which would help you to make the decision whether you should use blockchain, whether you're ready to adopt blockchain or not. And going through these questions, we'll go through these questions to help you identify that. As an example, are there multiple stakeholders involved in the transaction process? So in your ecosystem, are there multiple parties involved? Are you printing all of them in one facility internally, or using multiple third-party vendors or certified vendors? Is there a different design team? The parts are being shared across. You have to understand, like, who are the stakeholders in your process. In order to further justify whether you need blockchain or not, you need to understand that, is there inherent trust between these stakeholders, or do you need additional guarantees to prove that in spite of separate or disparate sources and entities, there is a middleware technology which can offer validation of data and can build trust using technology? Are audit trails required in your ecosystem? Does the solution need to be tamper-proof to alleviate cybersecurity concerns? Is a single source of truth important? So, in our opinion, a 3D printing ecosystem, which consists of digital manufacturing with several parties involved, several different softwares and software vendors involved, the answers to some of the questions that we identified is yes, but this is something which you in your ecosystem need to evaluate, and we can help you further down the road. So the next slide is about how blockchain impacts the 3D printing process. So what we are showing here is different stakeholders, for example, CAD and PLM software providers and software users. These could be companies like Dassault Systems providing Innovia and SolidWorks, or Siemens, NX, ERP companies, 3D printing machine hardware makers, or post-processing hardware makers, and companies like LINK3D, which are providing or unifying the digital thread by providing the link between the design teams to the manufacturing teams and automating the workflow process. To make it more clear, we are showing here the 3D printing process, which starts with ideation or conceptualization of a design idea or a concept, which is further taken through the PLM life cycle, leading up to design files and iterations across them, leading up to finally print-ready files, which are further sent to internal or trusted manufacturing partners, where an application engineering team works on the file, uses software like Magix or NetFab or any other build processor software, depending upon the machine they have, for example, EOS Print or something like that, and goes through the build preparation process, and then the part actually goes to the production process, and finally to the shipping and delivery network. Now, what we want to show here is utilizing blockchain. Depending upon whichever stage of this 3D printing process you are, you can achieve some level of data security and governance. For example, if you are at an ideation or conceptualization stage, or you're in the design phase, you can achieve, like you can store all the file iteration data and your IP on the blockchain. You can get assurance about your design file integrity and achieve functionalities related to your digital rights management. once the file is being sent to a contract manufacturer, you can utilize blockchain to understand if that contract manufacturer has the necessary credentials and authentications to print that part. For example, using blockchain, you can know if they have certain certifications, do they own certain machines, have they printed certain types of parts, do they have a fulfillment record. Furthermore, when the part goes to the application engineering team, blockchain can be really used to validate if the correct part is being printed, correct file is being used, and the correct machine parameters, for example, are used or not. During the production stage, blockchain can be used more like a data storage to store your logs and other metadata derived during sensing, using IoTs or sensor networks during the production stage. And finally, during shipment and delivery, which is supply chain logistics is a very big use case for blockchain. So that's an entire vertical on its own in the 3D printing ecosystem. Having said that, the goal still is how blockchain can be used to help us go on the path to achieve 100% repeatability. So, having looked at the ecosystem and the stages, let's identify who needs blockchain and why do they need blockchain. So in this slide, we can see several participants in the 3D printing ecosystem. OEMs being companies who are making parts. For example, in the automotive industry, these could be companies like BMW or Ford. In the healthcare industry, this could be companies like Stryker. In the aviation, it could be companies like GE or Boeing. These are the companies who are truly pushing the boundaries, making new designs, or on the forefront of utilizing 3D printing to come up with new innovations in the product. Then there are service bureaus who are essentially manufacturing partners to OEMs or to their customers. They are printing parts based on the requests. There are CAD and PLM software providers. These are companies who are helping both OEMs and service bureaus and other companies in managing their design process and managing the product lifecycle. Then there are MES software providers, there's ERP software providers, and finally 3D printing hardware manufacturers. I believe that the 3D printing hardware manufacturers have a big role to play in this end-to-end traceability and repeatability of 3D printing parts. We'll dive slightly deeper into how each one of these participants in the 3D printing ecosystem are utilizing blockchain or can utilize blockchain today. For example, OEMs, one of the primary use cases for them is ensuring all their parts that are being manufactured are traceable in terms of which machines they were printed on, what were the machine parameters, what materials were being used. As an example, was it a first run or was it a reused material? What were the log file data showing and the sensing data showing? Similar to OEM on the printing side, the service bureaus, in addition to OEMs on the printing side, the service bureaus can also utilize blockchain to for a proof of capability. What we mean by proof of capability is that service bureaus can showcase their capabilities in terms of what kind of specialization in terms of AM processes, in terms of machines that they print on, in terms of materials they handle, their certifications they provide, and proof of experience, which is what they have printed in the past. Going further, CAD and PLM software provides end-to-end integration and tracking of files, their versions, ownership and attribution, design and IP protection, build of materials, and the complete audit trail of the design process. The MES software providers and users can utilize blockchain for material traceability, for material and machine parameters and production logging. The ERP software providers and users can use it for quotations, invoices, POs, ensuring delivery tracking, delivery info, and the supply chain vertical of the 3D printing ecosystem. And finally, the 3D printing hardware manufacturers can open up the space to track which files were actually printed, how many times, on which machines, using what parameters, and basically connect the last leg of the traceability here. Let's dive deeper into some of these use cases and review them and see how it applies to different, how blockchain applies to different use cases. So we're going to cover 4 use cases. The first use case is about design file integrity and digital rights management. So here, we believe that blockchain is an enabler technology. It's not the solution to all the problems in the IP protection. The way we believe that blockchain would be used will be for storing metadata around the files, the changes and tracking of the files. This could help with problems like files being lost, stolen, or being used by a wrong party, and that information being tracked on blockchain seamlessly through different softwares can result in getting an alert. However, it is important to have a unique digital fingerprint for the file. As you know, in 3D printing, the file can be slightly modified to change that fingerprint if it was a simple hash or something. So it is important to first find out what are the feature vectors for that digital fingerprint, such that blockchain can guarantee that the original files are stored and a tampered file is not being used when the file moves between intermediary organizations and software tools. Let's get on to the second use case here, which is Service Bureau authentication and proof of capability. As previously mentioned, by proof of capability, we imply that the Service Bureau is demonstrating that they have certain credentials or certain capabilities to print a certain part or to achieve certain results in the 3D printing process. This can be demonstrated by pushing their certification information, putting their proof of owning a particular machine information, and proof of owning a certain material information, and having blockchain provide that validation. Second aspect that we have discussed here is proof of experience. In this case, previous fulfillment of 3D printing parts by service bureaus can be attested by other participating verifiers, such that there is a validated history in terms of transactions on the blockchain. In this case, we are looking blockchain more as a storage infrastructure, such that service bureaus are using it for storing their capabilities and experience. You can almost imagine it to be like a Yelp of 3D printing service bureaus on the blockchain infrastructure. What it offers is it provides OEMs with more peace of mind and trust in the partners that they're choosing, and in terms of validating them and choosing them. Let's get into the next use case, which is traceability. And this is one of my favorites because traceability is one of the biggest challenges and one of the most important requirements in some sense to achieve for 3D printing parts for a host of reasons. And I'm going to just go into how end-to-end traceability can be achieved using blockchain. So in 3D printing, right from the desk of the engineer who is designing the part to the application engineer who is manufacturing it, and then the part being shipped by the shipment and the logistic departments, and the part goes back to the right consumer and is being used. And end-to-end traceability is a requirement, we believe, in the 3D printing ecosystem. And aligned with our goals of Digital Factory unifying the data trail on 3D printing, this traceability on blockchain allows for capturing machine and material data, the exact machine and material data that was used for production, the exact parameters that was used for production, and which was provided by the prototyping team or by the design team, and the log files which were generated from the machines at different stages or on the software, and the sensing data that was captured. All of that data can be connected to the same part by identifying a unique part ID or a hash or something, and can be connected to the same data trail. The benefits of achieving this traceability are many, and we're going to cover forensics here and recall management. So take, for example, a car manufacturing company printed some parts, and some of those parts were not printed with the right parameters, as a result of which now they want to do some kind of recall. Now they need to isolate which run or which lot of all the parts that were being printed were printed using the wrong or incorrect machine parameter or the material usage. And having a end-to-end traceability solution, which is immutable in some sense, which cannot be modified by collusion of an administrative person on the IT side, gives more peace of mind and guarantees about the solution. The audit trails that could be built and provided to the customers, and the transparency that it could provide to the customer is very important as well. Furthermore, like previously mentioned, not only it can be used to do forensics or more like reactive checks, but it could be also used as a proactive quality control mechanisms, where after the part is being printed or during the printing of the part, it could be verified if the correct file or the correct parameter was used or not. And all of that can be done using blockchain, eliminating any middle layers of human or other tamperable, hackable softwares involved in the process. With that, let's go into the last, which is an industry in itself, which is supply chain tracking. In 3D printing ecosystem, we consider that using IoTs and sensors for packaging to ensure the packages are not tampered with, and ensuring the shipping and tracking data was fully tracked, and ensuring the correct number of parts were printed, and the amount of documents that were generated using codes, invoices, POs, and other EDI data. All of that is tracked on blockchain. So essentially our goal here is to ensuring tracking and delivery of parts in an untampered manner in the supply chain aspects. So now we have covered 4 primary use cases. There are several other use cases, but we're not going to go deeper into that today. Having covered that, we would like to have a slight discussion on how you as an organization can implement blockchain at a high level. So here we are showing that you can have 3 different kinds of blockchain. At a high level, you can have a private blockchain, which could be powered by Link3D. We could help you build your blockchain in your ecosystem, in your enterprise. Or you can choose to have a hybrid blockchain, where you can have a private blockchain for internal transactions, but you can also use a public blockchain for storing certain other types of transactions where you are collaborating with some other third parties, and it needs to be on a different chain. Or you can totally decide to use a public blockchain, for example, Ethereum network, in which case you'll have to pay for each transaction. And depending upon the type of implementation that you have chosen, there could be several distributions. For example, in private blockchain, you could use Ethereum Sawtooth or Tendermint or Ethermint distribution, and different kind of consensus protocols can be used here. You could use a Hyperledger Fabric-based distribution, which is backed by IBM and is very much made for enterprise-to-enterprise blockchain. Or you could simply use standard Ethereum distribution. We at Link can help you identify what fits your need and can configure and integrate into your Linked Digital Factory account, such that without having to go deeper into operational aspects of it, your digital factory is now blockchain enabled, and everything can be seamlessly and transparently tracked on blockchain, which takes us towards 100% repeatability of parts. So in summary, I would like to mention that we went through over blockchain characteristics, we covered how blockchain works, and we looked into what are the benefits and why should we use blockchain. Some of the, for data governance, for data security, data provenance, in particularly audit trails, forensics and recall management, quality control. Having gone through the benefits, we at Link3D can help you to implement different kinds of blockchain, be it private, hybrid, or public, and be your partner on your goal to achieve 100% repeatability of parts. So with that, I would like to thank you all for listening and open the floor for question and answers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vishal, for the time you spent sharing about your knowledge on blockchain. It was super interesting. So now we'll open the floor to questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to click on the Q&A icon below and type it in. So the first question goes to Tom Puttyfoot. He says, to me, the largest challenge when looking at scaled AM is the integration of multiple software products, PLM platforms, multiple AM machines, technologies, and multiple disparate facilities or locations on a global scale. This is an area that is typically controlled by enterprise IT. How is the industry, and more specifically Link3D, looking to address this?
Hi, Tom. That's a great question, actually. And more than technology questions, it's an enterprise adoption kind of question. We at Link3D are providing technological solutions and enablement so that this problem becomes easier. For example, we are providing with plugins into different softwares that enterprises are using today, all of which can talk to the Link3D digital factory. And these can be enabled to connect directly to the enterprise blockchain, either directly or using Linked.
Great. And an anonymous attendee mentioned, we're an automotive company thinking of implementing blockchain. Can you show us an example from your tech of how it is stored for these certain transactions?
That's a good question. I'll quickly go to another screen and show you. So in this case, if you're on my screen, you can see this is a simple demo of how blockchain participability, all this data is coming from Link3D's digital factory. So we have a workflow where the RFQ being generated and then the bid is submitted, the project is awarded, finally it goes into in production, and production is completed, finally it's shipped and the order is delivered. So as these transactions are coming in, we are storing it on the blockchain, private network in this case, ring by private network in this case, and this data we are also storing in the database. So we also have the actual data, but we also know who created this transaction, what was the metadata that came with this transaction. So this data gets stored in an immutable way on the blockchain.
Great, I hope that answers your question, John. Another question from Tom Puttyfoot. Also, personally, I think that one of the largest challenges lies in the monitoring, recording of events that occur during the manufacturing process, as well as requirements for part certification and qualification, as parts need to be checked throughout the entire process and not just inspected at the end. How do you think about this? What are the potential solutions?
Okay, thanks, Tom. This is a good question. So there are two parts to this question. One is how do we use blockchain for storing, monitoring data and recording events that happen during the manufacturing process? And the second part is, can we use it for certification and qualification, or if there are other processes in the ecosystem, how does both of them work together? So the first part is more of an IoT storing information in the blockchain question. And that's very much doable. Like stream data can be stored on blockchain, and this data can be linked to the job being printed at that time, which in turn can be linked to the RFQ and the files. And furthermore, that could be linked to the certification process. So in terms of building out the solution, it can be built out depending upon different companies, how they follow the certification and qualification process. But in terms of utilizing blockchain for storing and monitoring and recording data, like that could be done easily. We actually enable that today.
Great. Yeah, another question from Jenny. Hello, I try to understand when I have very heavy file for 3D print, I need to keep it in each block of blockchain log to be sure it's the same. Let's say Shapeway is used to make parts. How much work is needed to get them to provide their blockchain data?
So the way the information is stored on blockchain, there could be different solutions of how information can be stored. you may not want to store the file itself in the blockchain, but actually store a fingerprint of the file such that that file can be uniquely identified. And the actual file could be used in a different storage like IPFS or another cloud or your local data system. But yes, that's doable. And Shapeway can provide you the data only if Shapeway is blockchain enabled. And if they are, then they should be able to provide you with an interface using which you can go to and look into the blockchain, similar to how I just showed you the Etherscan. Depending upon what blockchain technology is used, end users should be able to look at their blockchain data.
Got it, got it. Thank you so much, Matt and Jenny. Yes. So another person's asking, Catherine here, if I want to use a private blockchain, will information be public to others? I'm concerned with privacy issues.
So if you're using a private blockchain, the underlying assumption is in your enterprise or in your company, like somebody is running that blockchain. It's already operationalized. So that information will not be available outside the company. The important part is within the company, is that information protected within the company? So that depends on how the blockchain infrastructure was architected and created. But if there are a lot of nodes within the enterprise, it should be possible to keep it private.
Thank you. Wow, we have so many questions here. All right, Sergey just mentioned, can you share the slides after the webinar? The answer is yes, we will. Jack here is asking, all 3D printing requires STL or OBJ files. Can a blockchain identifier be embedded in that file so that the designer would get credit every time that file is printed?
That's a very good idea, and one of the main reasons why IP protection and the attribution of ownership or authorship, and that could be done using blockchain.
Great. Another one. Phil, yes, we can. Can you share a specific example of a customer's use of blockchain for their 3D printing manufacturing, ideally something in supply chain or traceability?
We can share some examples, but we cannot go into the name of the companies right now. For all practical purposes, imagine that when the part order is being submitted to the correct internal facility, we maintain a trace of basically a log of on the blockchain about who submitted the part order and when was it received by the internal facility and how much was the bid amount or the quote amount was by the internal facility and when the project was awarded to that facility as a log of the supply chain side. Now there are other use cases. We are working with with one of the companies in which we want to store metadata generated during the printing process itself. But it depends on the kind of sensors on the machine. So we have to do some engineering around that to make sure this information could be extracted and stored and linked to the correct part order.
Great. I'm a service bureau and I don't know how to operate my own blockchain network. What should I do?
So in short, I mean, that's a very legitimate problem today. And one of the goals of Linked Digital Factory is that you don't have to run your blockchain. You just have to enable blockchain on your digital factory account. And during that process, we will set up that for you. And you'd be able to use it private within our cloud or public using a public Ethereum-like network.
Awesome. And to follow up on Tom's question, do you already have working APIs for Materialize, especially Magix and robot software today?
Not for Magix. We have for some of the more open CAD software like SolidWorks. We have integrations. Yeah.
Awesome. So can you talk about some real-world examples where you implemented blockchain in an enterprise and what was the outcome? I think that was kind of a repeat of the question before. So I'm going to say this is done. I'd like to hear more about digital fingerprinting on blockchain. For example, IP on the blockchain and specifically your thoughts about it being built into CAD systems and any benefits of that.
This is a great question. I think the 3D printing industry needs it. We are working on it. And if it is built in the CAD system, it's right at the source where it should be, and it should be also on the blockchain. There are several technologies utilizing geometric algorithms, using machine learning algorithms, which would make that happen. There is no one digital fingerprinting solution. There could be several which would coexist. Yes.
Awesome. And I've heard that Ethereum is slow, the transactions are limited. Will I hit a scalability problem?
If you choose to use Ethereum or the public blockchain option in the digital factory, and your transaction amounts are too high, you could, but right now, I mean, with all the ICOs going on, this problem will take some time to happen. Moreover, Ethereum is also switching their solution and making it more scalable using techniques like sharding, side channels, and switching their network to proof of stake from proof of work. So this problem might go away actually.
Awesome. And how is your approach different from Moog's VeryPart, their recent blockchain supply chain system? Can and could Link3D SW talk with their network?
So I'm not deeply familiar with their solution, but the answer to if multiple blockchains can talk to each other, the answer is yes.
Great. And what makes blockchain impenetrable as compared with other cyber storage mechanisms?
Because blockchain is based on cryptographic and consensus-based protocols, a single piece of information is replicated at multiple nodes, and in order to really make it break the system, you have to compromise all the nodes, and that is not possible in a blockchain-based network.
Gotcha. And for Sean, for service bureaus, how is the experience being tracked?
The experience can be tracked, for example, in Link's digital factory. Every time you complete a part order and that part is marked completed, we log that on the blockchain, and that information can be made available to your customers. So that is an example of the experience being tracked. And it could be built deeper. We can go deeper into that topic.
Yeah, we maybe want to create another webinar just for that, right, Vishal?
Yeah.
If I want to use a private blockchain, how will my blockchain operate with another OEM?
So one of the solutions that we proposed was in a private block. It all depends on which blockchain you're using. So suppose you're using a distribution of Ethereum blockchain, and your counterpart OEM is also using another Ethereum kind of blockchain, then we have to do some engineering to have you interoperate with them. But if both of you are starting from the beginning, you could use something like Hyperledger, which is designed for that kind of use case.
Great. And Tom, again, we currently use a third-party file transfer service with a customer. When I stumbled upon SiaCoin, I thought that technology could be very helpful for that. Would you rather propose a private blockchain between customer and supplier for that, or is SiaCoin a potential solution for this?
So first of all, blockchain should not be used for storing files, because at some point storage would become limitation, but it should become more like a reference to the file being stored. So if you're using a solution like IPFS, interplanetary file system, or you're using something like Amazon Cloud or some other cloud, you should use that kind of secure system. And we, for example, on our system allow transferring up to 5 gig of files with 256-bit encryption. So you need to use a system which allows for big data, big files to be stored, which is not the blockchain. The blockchain is meant for smaller transaction, which needs to be verified. So fingerprint of that file is something that should be stored on the blockchain. Not deeply familiar with what SiaCoin is doing, but I'll take a look into that.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. A couple more questions from the panelists. Is it possible to have some parameters not important to repeat the print, but initially it was considered like important? How to take away from log some parameter, like ambient temperature, for example?
Okay, so I think I understand the question. So the question is, if we are using blockchain for verification or validation, and previously the rule was defined that ambient temperature should be like let's say some degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, and that rule is changing now. how do we handle that on blockchain, because the assumption is blockchain is immutable. So what will happen actually is you'll create a new record on blockchain with a new rule, and what you will do is, for printing, like you'll update the rule, the old rule stays, but there is now a log that a new rule has been applied, and that new rule will be used for validation.
Great. Another question from Jenny. Blockchain has critics, for example, for irreversibility. If something was made by mistake, it will be saved anywhere and become a rule for the next recall. So I guess that.
Yeah, that's the same question. So you don't have to use the rule. A block, like how you use and how you update the rule, you have to build. If you're doing it using a smart contract, you have to update it within the system, or you can simply say, like utilize the next rule.
All right, so one last question from Matt. For a service company, might need to be able to handle multiple blockchain systems.
Either you can do that. I mean, it's almost like, do you want to handle multiple ERP systems, or like typically if you're working with a SaaS company, like for Link3D in this case, that would offer, suppose your counterpart requires you to participate in the blockchain, you'd need to work with either install or have multiple blockchain systems on your end, or use a SaaS-based provider who can help you with that.
Awesome, awesome. Oh, sorry, Satwinder, which question is that? Do you mind reposting it? I think it's this one. How can benefits be accomplished in closed systems like that of Carbon?
So one of the challenges of in the 3D printing ecosystem is that there are a lot of closed systems, and these systems, in order to, and that's why, like, the whole industry needs to take a step forward to make it more open and interoperable in some way. But to answer your particular question, like if Carbon needs to implement a blockchain-like strategy, like if Carbon software is used by their customers, that software needs to talk to a blockchain network which is maintained by Carbon, or their customers could be using our digital factory, which already talks to blockchain with some kind of partnerships. There could be several ways in which this could be accomplished, but yes, the Carbon software will need to either directly or using a third-party software need to interact with blockchain.
Great, thank you. I hope that answered your question, Satwinder, and everyone else that was on this webinar today. If you guys have additional questions, feel free to email janet@link3d.co. We'd be more than happy to gather all of your questions and then send an email with a summary. All right, well, thank you so much for your time. Minjun, don't worry, we will respond to you via email. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, have a nice day, everyone.